Thank you for joining us. My name is Russ Henry, and on behalf of Cumulus Networks, I'd like to welcome you to Open Hardware for All webinar. Presenting today will be Andy Quinn. Andy is the head of hardware products and alliances at Cumulus Networks. He is responsible for all hardware products and alliances at Cumulus Networks. He has been in the industry for 18 years in server, networking, and security. He has held leadership roles in sales, product management, and product marketing. This webinar will be about 30 to 45 minutes, and we will answer a few questions from participants at the end if time permits. For those of you who want to ask questions, please type your questions into the questions window on your screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. You can also tweet your questions to us. Our Twitter handle is @CumulusNetworks. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to Andy.
Thank you, Russ. Hey, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thanks for tuning in. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'd like to share with you the state of open networking, the key challenges, and how we solved those challenges here at Cumulus. The key focus of today's discussion is around how to enable an open networking hardware ecosystem that provides choice and confidence. So we'll start with some recent news in the current state of open networking, and then look at two challenges from hardware ecosystem standpoint and how do we address those. So about 2 weeks ago at OCP Summit, Cumulus Networks announced two things. One is a technical framework called APD, ACPI Platform Description, which is a technical framework to accelerate integration between the OS and open hardware. We also announced a commercial program called OH, Open Hardware Program. So that is more of a commercial program in place to streamline and standardize the overall partner onboarding, integration, and the go-to-market process. So with that, I think the natural question is why are you guys doing this and why it's needed? To answer this, let's first look at the current state of open networking. So open and disaggregation really is not a new concept. If you look at what happened to the server world, the servers used to be totally integrated, vertically integrated systems, from IBM, digital, those old days, those microservers and mainframes. But now it's totally disaggregated. You can buy a server from Dell, HP, or any other vendors, and then you can get the OS separately, either it's Linux or Windows. The networking world is going through the same revolution. Customers are buying bare metal networking hardware and networking OSs separately so that they can gain the same freedom and cost benefit as in the server world. So networking based on bare metal hardware has actually been deployed in the hyperscale data center for many, many years. As the hyperscale guys actually realized a long time back that the vendor locked-in model doesn't work for them. So to be most cost-effective and flexible enough to enable rapid innovation, they disaggregate the OS from underlying bare metal hardware and then deploy them at a very large scale. So this not just saved them a lot of money upfront on the capital outlay, and also saved significantly on the day-to-day operational basis. So this particular trend is now very active in enterprise data centers. So just like the CEO of OCP, Corey Bell, said, the openness breeds progress. I think that being open, disaggregate, this particular model can help the whole market to drive down cost and drive up the efficiency and effectiveness. So open networking, the disaggregated model, is happening, and not just in hyperscale data centers, but also in traditional enterprise data centers. But from open hardware perspective, well, what is the ideal world? The ideal world of open networking should look like this. A customer can buy any bare metal switches without worrying whether or not the OS can run on it or not. So today, if you go out buy a server, you probably never worry about if Windows or Linux work on it or not. You know it well. So we want a similar thing happen on the open networking front. So it's all about choice. And the second part is a customer, when they buy a bare metal platform, they know it's designed and built to a standard quality, and it will be supported in a standard way. So that is the confidence. However, as of today, there actually are challenges. First of all, the integration between the networking OS and an open hardware is not that predictable. It's totally unpredictable, I would say. There's no standard way of doing this. Every vendor do it in their own way, and it takes time. So I'm going to illustrate to you, how much time it actually takes. And sometimes it's not at control of the hardware vendors. You have to work with the OS vendors to making sure they prioritize this and put in their work pipeline to get integration done. So that particular choice is limited because of this particular integration challenge. And also, there's not much of consistency in open networking hardware. So when this whole thing started about 2 years back, the open hardwares are designed in a different way. So there's no way for any customer to know that they actually are designed in a similar standard quality fashion, and also making sure every vendor follow the same process. So that particular challenge actually impacts the confidence. So we need a system or program in place to making sure that the design, the process, and the quality, and also the support are standardized. So first, let's look at the first challenge, that's the integration challenge. So we kind of speaking from our own experience how the integration is traditionally done. So in the way how the OS today, the networking OS, integrate with a particular platform, there's a couple of different steps in this. But the first and the foremost, we call it the paper step. So we receive a hardware spec from the hardware vendor, and which covers all the details about that particular switch. And that, we're going to dive into that particular file and understand how the port LEDs are mapped, how the PHYs works, and what are the CPLD specs, and how things are connected, what are the logics. So this typically takes a long time. And the funny thing is, 100% of the time, this file is not accurate. So we have to go back and forth with the hardware vendor to clarify what is this, and then that whole process takes a lot of time. And after everything's cleared, we start to work on this, the drivers. And when we do that, we create drivers per that platform. And also a lot of separate control code. All of them are written for that particular platform. So in the code, you can see all different platforms have their own drivers and controls. And also during this integration process, if something goes wrong with hardware, we still have to go back to the hardware guys and let them to fix it, and then we fix our code. So this back and forth, again, take a lot of time. So overall, based on our experience, right now with this legacy method, it's about months, couple of months, to complete that integration process, which is looks reasonable from legacy perspective, but actually it's becoming a challenge to really enable that choice for open networking. So can we do better? I think we can, because someone already done this before. If you look at the server world, they already solved this problem. They use a standard interface called ACPI to describe the server and the laptops so that the OS can easily generate the right controls automatically. And all we need to do is to, not reinvent the wheel, but leverage and extend that to open networking. So what we are doing here exactly like that. So we let the bare metal switching vendors describe their switches to the upper layer networking OS in a standard-based machine-readable format. So that format, we call it APD, the ACPI platform description. So what APD does, in essence, it actually removes the hardware specifics from NOS, from the networking operating system. So if you look at this graph, the top describes what it looks like today. So today, like I described earlier, we develop all the specific driver for that platform in OS. So as you can see, in the hardware-specific information, it lives on both sides, on the OS and also in the hardware itself, because everything's specific for that particular hardware. So that doesn't scale. You have to, every single time you touch something, you have to touch both. And all things are tied together so that two vendors have to log in step by step to make sure an integration happens. With APD, the things change into a different way. We actually segregate those two. So in the NOS, there is no platform specific. Everything is generic. So the drivers, the infrastructure is one piece of code. It doesn't care which platform that is. But all the hardware specific information lives on that hardware. So the OS will read that particular information through that APD specification, and it automatically generates the controls to control that hardware. So this is quite significant because by segregating this, the hardware vendors can describe their hardware in their own schedule and also match their own time to market. And also because it's a standard way, it can enable them very quickly to integrate with many different network OS. Well, the result, at least from our experience, is quite significant. So like I said earlier, the legacy way of integration, it takes months. But with APD, now we shrink that into days. So with APD, we actually piloted with one hardware partner, and we're very happy to see the results, at least 80% of the reduction in time for integration. So with that, I mean, the hardware compatibility list can really grow pretty fast than the pace that we had before. So if you look at this, I mean, there may be a good analogy here. So on the server side, you have ACPI, you have Pixie boots to load the OS. So that really kind of fostered that ecosystem for server and separate OS. So on the switching side, on the open networking side, in a similar fashion. So you have ONI, which is an open network install environment. That helps you to load any OS you want on that particular switches. And APD, it helps you to integrate it with any OS you want to. So in the end, it provides customer choice. And by the way, ONI and APD, ONI is already part of the OCP, and APD is being contributed to OCP projects. So everything's going to be open. So let's look at the second challenge. So the first challenge is choice, but APD has helped us to really take that out, to dramatically shorten the time for the integration, to make choice available to end customer. So the second one is how do a customer be confident about the open networking platforms? How do we ensure the consistency there? The answer to that is have a standardized process and a criteria in place to do that. So for us, the way we do it is we established a well thought out partner program. So in that program, we call it Open Hardware program. So in that program, we use APD as the integration mechanism, but also cover the hardware best practices from design and operational standpoint. In the very end, we provide a certification. We call it Cumulus Linux Ready. So when an end customer see that logo, Cumulus Linux Ready, they can be sure that this particular hardware went through the whole design checks and operational best practices, and also the Cumulus Linux is perfectly working on that platform. So speaking of this program, it uses APD for integration, but goes way beyond just integration. So for example, if you look at this program, there are multiple stages, starting from the business aspects. So when we work with a hardware partner, we first want to evaluate if they are in the right spot for us to work with, if there's a mutual benefit. So we look at their business side, their market, their capability to service their customer. Do they have enough credibility there to actually be in the marketplace? Do they have the right technology? And also, most importantly, we evaluate, do they have the right process? For example, do they have the right product change and notification process? Do they have the right new product introduction process? And also, along with that, we're going to check if they have all the prerequisites actually met to start the integration. The simple thing like, do they have the right port numbering? Do they have the right luggage tag on the switch so that for end customer, they can easily understand which switch is what's the MAC address and serial number of each switch. So simple thing like that. So we cover that in this program guide. And the second stage is about engagement, because in the end, we want to make sure we service the market. So it's important that we can actually have those platforms be available in the marketplace. So we will figure out with the partner what's the model to go together. So either joint sale or resale or integrated model, and how the support is done in each model. Then we move to the integration. The integration, it covers a lot of aspects, but the main part is the APD. So we're going to provide all the detailed trainings and give them the method, criteria, test image, and the self-validation kit, and all that stuff to help hardware partners to quickly get their platform up and running with APD. And in the very end, we do a clear certification, which is Cumulus Linux Ready certification. And this doesn't end here. Actually, after the integration, we're going to work with the hardware partner on the go-to-market front. So that's where the consistency comes in. So we want to make sure every vendor have the data sheet available, have the website available, have their channel notification, enablement, everything's ready, and also support how we collaborate with them to make sure that when there's an issue, customer can actually get the support that they deserve. So all those different steps and stages is to ensure the quality and the consistency to give end customer any confidence for the open networking. So here at Cumulus, with Open Hardware program and the equivalent program for software ecosystem, so we were able to build a very strong technology ecosystem partnership portfolio. If you look at the graph, currently we have 6 hardware partners ranging from the traditional ODMs and the large OEMs. And also on top of that, we have lots of software partners. So having the right program, it helps us to really build a strong portfolio. And this number actually going to be bigger by end of this year, because thanks to this standardized and streamlined program, we're able to grow very fast. So just to sum it up, open networking is happening, and APD, ACPI platform description, that helps us to dramatically reduce this integration time between OS and open hardware. In the end, it allows the end customer to be able to access great platforms from all different hardware vendors, and much faster. The open hardware program from Cumulus Networks will ensure the consistency and the quality. So again, in the end, it provide the end customer need confidence in open networking platforms. So with that, let's open up for questions.
Okay. So far, there's only been a handful, so let me ask you the first one. If I'm a hardware manufacturer, how do I join the Open Hardware program?
Well, that's a good question. So let me probably get to the next slide. So we have on Cumulus Networks website, we have an Open Hardware page. In there, it introduces what this Open Hardware program looks like, what it takes, and also there's a button you can click. It's called Join the Program. So in there, you can fill out some basic information, and we're going to reach out to you to start the stage process for Open Hardware. So we're going to go through stage 1, 2, 3, 4 to get the new partner on board and the integration started.
Okay, great. So we have a question from Eric. Will you be supporting Facebook 6-pack?
So at OCP Summit, we demonstrated our support on the Facebook wedge switch. So as you know, the wedge is an integral component actually on 6-pack. So I mean, I can't disclose the roadmap information, but I think from the technology standpoint, nothing stops us from supporting similar things like a six-pack.
Okay, the next question is from Scott. To clarify on most of these points, are you saying that we are still working on getting this correct? How long is it going to be until the final product is going to be seamlessly integrated?
That's a great question. So I think we can also translate that into when the APD is going to be available. Actually, it is already available. So I mentioned earlier, we piloted this with a particular hardware partner, and we were able to see a great results out of that. And actually, for Cumulus networks, all future platforms are going to be based on APD. What that means is the hardware partner is going to actually create APD description, and we're going to do the clear certification on that platform. So it's already happening. It's not a future thing we're talking about. This is what we're doing here at Cumulus.
Okay, our next question is, how do I get started on APD?
So the typical APD engagement process looks like this. I mean, after you register and join the program, we're going to reach out to you, talk about the business aspects, and after that, we're going to have the first APD training. So it's more of an introduction of technical details, and then follow that we'll have a APD workshop. In that workshop, we dive into the details of your platform, how that actually can be described in APD. So I would say, instead of saying that this is kind of a standalone effort by a hardware partner, it's more of a joint effort between Cumulus and that particular partner. So we handhold our partners to go through this integration process. So as part of the process, we also set up a GitHub repo. So in that repo, it'll cover all your ACPI tables. And if you also have a public GitHub repo there, capture all the how-to guide and the spec and the validation guide and also the test image. So it's a very collaborative effort, and it's also very open effort. It's not something, like I said earlier, an APD is being contributed to OCP, and also we are contributing our code to a Linux kernel. So we want everyone to enjoy this, and as part of this, we want to keep this whole process as a collaborative and as open as possible.
All right, the next question comes from Scott. Does APD help us integrate into other manufacturers in the network, such as Cisco or Arista?
That's a good question. I think the answer is yes, as long as Cisco and Arista adopt APD to actually use APD to describe their hardware. Once they've done that, Cumulus Linux can run on it, and other OS can run it too.
Okay. Juan asks, will APD support other NOS like Open Network Linux that is part of OCP? Are platform-specific drivers going to be open sourced?
Yes. Yeah, so there's two parts in this question. Let me answer the second part. I mentioned earlier, yes, that particular generic driver we're creating, we're actually upstreaming that to Linux kernel. So we already started that process, and like I said, we want everyone to enjoy that. So for the first part of the question, kind of related, yes. So the APD is open. So once the hardware vendors describe their hardware in APD format, and other OS vendors, they can adopt this and create their own integrators to use the ACPI and the APD description. Or they can leverage the generic drivers we contributed to the Linux kernel.
Will Cumulus offer certification in the future to gauge understanding of Cumulus? Actually, Andy, I'll take that one. Again, this is Russ Henry. I'm part of the technical training team here at Cumulus. We are researching the idea of certification. We don't have any solid plans yet, but we would likely will have a certification sometime in the future. We just don't have any dates we can announce at this point, so just stay tuned on that one. The next question is, Cumulus OS will support VXLAN L3 gateways and VXLAN 2 gateways to integrate with NSX and New Age. Is it ready?
So the layer 3 gateway, I don't know what exactly this question means for the layer 3 gateway. If you're talking about the riots, the route in and out of the tunnel, so the layer 3 features, so that's more of a limited by the chipsets instead of an OS. So as you guys know, the Threading 2 today doesn't have that feature. So you have to use external gateways for layer 3 routing. But for the future one, like T2 Plus or the drop-in T2s, so those ones which enable those features, and Cumulus Linux will support them when they come out.
Are there defined formats and examples for the deliverables, such as specs and so forth? This would be for a vendor submission.
Yes, yes. So now, first of all, for the APD submission, so that format actually going to be outlined on the GitHub. So it is ACPI spec. Like I said earlier, we're not reinventing the wheel, and the APD is going to use the exact same format as ACPI. So when you describe your switches in that format, you are using a standard-based format. And if you're talking about the submission to join the program, actually there's a very quick 2-table, so it's just to fill in blanks. So it's all standard-wide to submit your information.
Okay, I think this one was already asked, but we'll post again since it's on here. Is APD a Cumulus invention and only available on Cumulus Linux?
No, we started piloting this and use this internally, but we soon find out this could benefit the whole world. So to really foster that open networking, the choice and the confidence, so we are actually contributing this to OCP and the Linux kernel, so everyone can use this. So no, it's not a Cumulus thing. It's not gonna. It's gonna be available on other OSs other than just Cumulus Linux.
I would really be interested in learning more how this information can benefit Dell.
Sure. I would say let's reach out and have the discussion. So I think from Dell perspective, as a hardware partner, just like any other hardware partner, I mean, be able to describe your hardware at your own time schedule and make it available to integrate with any other OS, that actually is a huge benefit.
And then the last question is the slide deck going to be available for download? The answer is yes. Check the website. After this wraps up, the information will be there, as well as the recording of this presentation. All right, so again, whoops, they're still coming in here. What do you think about Big Switch? I understand they help develop ONI. Are they a competitor?
Yeah, it's kind of a loaded question, but yeah, I think Big Switch to us is more of a partner than a competitor. I mean, it's, for example, if we talk about in this APD context, actually APD could be used by Big Switch as well. They could actually benefit Big Switch very well. So actually, we are in communication with them on this particular effort. So to answer your question again, we didn't really view them as a competitor. We view them as a friend.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. So at this point, I just want to stop and say thank you to everyone for your participation. We hope that you found this presentation about open hardware useful. We'd really appreciate it if you offered feedback via the follow-up email that you'll receive for registering in this event. Please tune in for our next webinar on April 8th, which will cover vSphere modernization with open networking. And the presentation will be by one of our internal folks, a gentleman named Doug Yude. You can also join us at Coffee with Cumulus each Thursday morning for a product overview and an introduction to Cumulus Linux. The details are available on our website at cumulusnetworks.com/webinar. Thank you for your time.